When I was trained as an illustrator, it was emphasised that we had to go out and make drawings on site and then bring the drawings back and then compose a picture from the drawings and then paint it. When you draw, you delete the unnecessary aspects. Well, I was born in England, born in London, Lambeth, conceived on the Cornish coast. I went to art school, much against the wishes of my mother and my then stepfather. He was a civil engineer, a very practical, pragmatic man. But I think at that time, art really wasn't seen as a panacea. It was better to go into some industry where there would be some reasonable financial recompense. And art was seen as, by some of my friends at the time, my boyhood friends, they thought that perhaps I might be a pansy. And they were worried about keeping company with me. While at art school, I did a painting drawing course, and I was able to couple that with a commercial course of doing lettering, poster art, and I was lucky that I had the skills to become an illustrator in advertising, and I was hired to paint pictures of trucks. In those days, illustrators were possibly cheaper than photographers. And there were quite a few illustrators around town. I became one of them, and I was very fortunate that I had some terrific clients which afforded me or bought time and materials to paint. I hired a studio and parked myself in a corner and got my paints out, bought some materials, and I painted a series of pictures which eventually became an exhibition. And my very first exhibition was in 1965 at Australian Galleries. There's a theory, and I probably go along with that we didn't actually remember the 60s, if you lived in the 60s. But I managed to go overseas. I left Australia, went by boat in 1965, and spent the rest of the 60s and the early 70s in Europe. The light is different, certainly towards autumn. The sun's rays seem to slant at an oblique angle, so that when you're drawing something outdoors, you have more time to draw the light or the shadows because close to the equator, the light is changing quite quickly. There was a drawing exercise we used to do. You'd put something out on a flat area, a chair, for instance, and then we were told by the tutor to draw the shadow with a piece of chalk. And you could never draw the complete shadow in time, no matter how fast. And it looked as though the shadow was moving quite rapidly. And you almost felt giddy. You know, it wasn't actually the best thing to do because you felt a bit giddy. But the light here really has a much, not harsh, it's actually, yes, your shadows are much darker when you're working outdoors. In Europe, you can guarantee most shadows in painting will have a sort of purple, violet hue, where here they can almost be black. I never use black on my palette. I make my own dark neutrals out of primaries or high intensity, low intensity colours. The urban environment is where I live, and I use that as the basis of most of my pictures. Every now and then I'll go for drives, or when we drive somewhere to see people, I'll see something, I'll go back, make drawings, maybe take some photographs, and think about an idea to go with that image because the image itself is intriguing. And then I'll go back and find they've demolished it. So it's almost as though it's the kiss of death when I go and draw something. I've done this in the past where I and a publisher worked together on a series of drawings of Melbourne. It's so far back that some people tell me now it's almost like a historic document because of so much of the streetscape that's gone, it's been demolished. But I don't like to think, I try to avoid the postcard style painting. The same applies when I'm travelling. If I see something and I use it to work from, I don't like to, I find myself purposely being as objective as possible about the subject in order to avoid the happy postcard or the placemat image. But in the case of this motel, it had a wonderful sense of, let's say, could be the setting for a marvellous movie. The signage was collapsing, the facade was rusting, and I saw somebody walking in there. I actually thought it wasn't operating as a motel. I did go and knock on the door and went round the back and found that they were still letting out rooms. So I guess if you wanting to end your life, you might like to stay in one or two of the rooms for a while. It was a little bit tatty and rather depressing when I went inside some of the rooms. It has, I think, it's all been redesigned, and if they may have retained the old facade, and so it's probably quite a pleasant place. But I remember at the time, all that strange tattiness enhanced it for me. You know, it wasn't, I should be careful. I don't mean to be critical of the building. But its age, it was showing its age, and it was that I liked. It could be because I'm a mature age myself and I can identify with the past that's collapsing.